His gaze was fixed on her, the way she was playing with the orphanage children. Jungkook, the leader of Mafia gang, used to visit there occasionally. He loved the environment of the orphanage, calm and welcoming. But something has really changed in the environment. Now it's been a few months and Jungkook comes there daily just to see her. A person who caught his eyes on her, 𝐾𝐚𝐬, the younger daughter of well-known businessman Kim. Everyone knew about him, even Jungkook. Beside the mafia business, Jungkook had a big company as well. He didn't use any of those resources because he was focused on helping instant. He whispered as he heard a small laughter when she ran away and Kate followed her. She always had a kind smile on her face. Jungkook always noticed her whenever he came to the orphanage. Even if it's a small thing like this, Jungkook thought about the reason why he had fallen for her. Maybe it was her beauty or innocence, maybe it was her pure smile and kindness. Jungkook nodded his head and hopped in the car after taking a last glance at 𝐴. Jungkook entered the conference hall and everyone stood up to bow at him. He ordered this set. Jungkook asked, looking at the manager who was confused. Why didn't he come yet? Jungkook frowned. Jungkook asked again, and all of them shook their head, indicating no. Jungkook let out angry breath before standing up from the chair. He asked. Everyone was shocked when he spoke so harshly and loudly. A soft voice spoke, making Jungkook turn his attention to her. He looked at her and she was smiling innocently. He whispered, making her look at him confused. Jungkook smiled a bit at how innocent she was. Jungkook took one step closer to her, almost invading her personal space. He greeted her with a smile which he never showed to anyone. 𝐴 returned it with her own and bowed slightly to greet back. He added, pointed to the empty seat beside him. Everyone was shocked seeing him act like this. Normally, their boss never showed them this side of him, which is totally new for them. 𝐴 sat next to him, a little uncomfortable. The room was silent, and it seemed like everyone was staring at him weirdly. 𝐴 gulped and glanced at Jungkook, whose gaze was directed on her. His dark eyes were filled with curiosity, interest, and warmth. 𝐴 felt a flutter inside her stomach and cheek started burning red in embarrassment. Jungkook didn't respond, he only kept staring at her intensely. Her heart was beating erratically while his pressing gaze made her feel hot all over. She wanted nothing more than to turn around, run away from there, and hide herself somewhere. She was interrupted by Jungkook. Choi nodded and resumed talking. Wine breathed deeply in relief, but it was short lived because she had to share her opinion about it. Soon the meeting was over, and Wyan sighed deeply as everyone started to move out, making her relieved. But she was pulled back again. Wyan gulped and nodded, afraid to speak up or say anything else. Jungkook was still standing next to her. She felt like dying. The way he said it was so gentle, almost caring. She looked behind her and her eyes widened in shock. He said as he took his coat off and handed it to her. Vine felt overwhelmed by the gesture. She stared at him silently and then took it and put it on. Vine tried to put it down a bit, trying to fix it. Janko said as he took it and fixed it. She blushed, her cheek burning up. The man standing in front of her could probably melt ice with those intense black eyes of his. He said softly and gave her a small smile that made her heart skip a beat. It was a sweet smile that she hadn't seen before. Not even from anyone. She felt like she couldn't breathe when he smiled. She sat and smiled shyly. She felt like dying when he called her that. What the heck? Was it normal to blush every time when your partner calls you Miss Kim? She couldn't remember. She tried to ignore it and left as fast as possible. Jungkook chuckled and walked out of the office. Ryan couldn't help thinking about the incident which happened in the morning. After meeting with Jungkook, she was feeling something different which she never felt before. She wasn't sure what it was. But it was very confusing and she wasn't sure what she should do or even think about it. She didn't know why the butterflies were flying through her stomach whenever she thought about him. She asked, looking at Vian, concern written all over her face. Vian sighed and shook her head. Mrs. Kim was her mother, and she could feel something was changing in her behavior. She asked, looking at Vian curiously. Vian looked at her mother with confusion written all over her face. She questioned back. Mrs. Kim hummed and looked at her again. Mrs. Kim said impatiently, she said, avoiding the topic of love, not wanting her mother to ask her more questions. And Mrs. Kim was stubborn like Vian, so she decided to give her some time to think about it until she figured out her feelings. Mr. Kim said as he entered the mansion, making Vian to run to him and grab his briefcase. Mr. Kim asked, raising his eyebrow at Vian. She nodded her head in response, and Mrs. Kim placed both of his hands on her shoulders. He said coldly, Vian lowered her head, feeling guilty. He tried to persuade her. Why looked at him confused, why he wanted her to take over a company when she wasn't interested. Mrs. Kim said before walking to the dining table. Loud music, everyone enjoying themselves while dancing and drinking. Someone was sitting at the counter and gulping the glasses one by one. His mind was blank at the moment, all he thought about YN. He wanted her for himself. It would be a lie if someone said he was just obsessed with her. It was not only an obsession, he really actually crazy about her. He wanted to be close to her and hug her tightly. He wanted to be with her every second of the day and every day of his life. But that was impossible because she was too perfect, too much to him. And it was just so unfair to him. He whispered and gulped the drink again. Jungkook heard her and turned his body slowly so they could face each other. Jungkook smirked. The woman said, making him look away. Jungkook told her and turned away from her. She looked shocked at the remark. She whispered while gritting her teeth.